In a lively, urban environment, the sun shines brightly over a bustling city alley. Among the clamor of distant car horns and the chatter of pedestrians, a black woman in scrubs kneels beside a homeless man slumped on the ground. Her medical bag lies open as she calmly examines the man's condition, her every action deliberate and compassionate. Passers-by glance curiously but move along, trusting the scene to be one of care and professionalism. Amid the hum of the city, a white police officer arrives on the scene, his presence commanding and aggressive. He steps out of his patrol car and strides toward the pair, his gaze sharp with suspicion. The sight of a black woman in scrubs assisting a homeless man does not fit his limited worldview. His assumptions ignite without pause for context, and he immediately prepares for confrontation. As he approaches, the officer begins to interrogate the woman with a tone that is curt and accusatory. He demands to know what she is doing, cutting her off when she attempts to explain. Her calm demeanor and clear articulation do little to dissuade him from his preconceived notions. "I'm a doctor," she says, gesturing to her credentials hanging around her neck, but the officer's response is dismissive and laced with hostility. The tension escalates as the officer's accusations grow more aggressive. He accuses her of trespassing or engaging in illicit activity. The homeless man, too weak to speak in her defense, can only watch helplessly as the situation unfolds. The doctor remains composed, repeating her explanation with unwavering patience, even as the officer begins to encroach on her personal space. Ignoring her words, the officer abruptly grabs her arm and pulls her to her feet, pushing her against the wall. Her medical bag tumbles to the ground, scattering its contents across the pavement. Shocked by his unwarranted use of force, the woman pleads for him to stop, but her protests fall on deaf ears. To the officer, her credentials and calm explanations mean nothing against the weight of his own biases. Onlookers gather at the edge of the alley, some pulling out their phones to record the unfolding confrontation. The murmurs among them grow louder as the officer escalates his actions, ignoring both the woman's professional attire and the badge of authority hanging from her neck. The scene is charged with disbelief and discomfort as the officer, blinded by prejudice, continues his mistreatment. Little does he know, the woman he is assaulting is no ordinary citizen. Her life is intricately tied to the very institution he serves. As the tension in the alley builds, so does the irony of the officer's ignorance. A storm is brewing, one that will soon dismantle his assumptions and force him to reckon with the consequences of his actions. The stage is set for a dramatic twist that will shift the power dynamics of the situation and reveal the hidden truth about the woman's connections and influence. The question remains, how will the officer react when he learns the full extent of his error? And what will this mean for both him and the woman who refused to let prejudice dictate her actions? The doctor is a beacon of compassion and dedication, widely regarded for her exceptional skills and deep commitment to her patients. A leading physician in her field, she often goes beyond the confines of her hospital duties, volunteering at free clinics and shelters in underserved communities. Her tireless work ethic stems from a genuine desire to make a difference in the lives of others, especially those who lack access to quality health care. Her colleagues admire her for her steady hands in the operating room and her ability to connect with patients on a human level. Despite her demanding career, the doctor remains grounded. She is married to a high-ranking police commissioner, a position that could easily bring her into the spotlight. However, she has chosen to keep her personal life private, preferring to let her work speak for itself. Her relationship with her husband is built on mutual respect, and a shared commitment to public service, though their professions sometimes place them on different sides of societal challenges. While he works to uphold law and order, she fights to heal the physical and emotional wounds caused by systemic inequalities. Her upbringing played a significant role in shaping her worldview. Raised in a modest household, she witnessed the disparities in healthcare access firsthand. Her family's struggles ignited a passion within her to create change, propelling her to excel academically and secure a scholarship to medical school. Now, as a leading figure in her field, she uses her platform to advocate for equity and compassion in medicine. Her efforts extend beyond treating illnesses. She also mentors aspiring healthcare professionals, ensuring the next generation continues the fight for justice. In stark contrast stands the cop, a man whose approach to his profession couldn't be more different. Known for his quick temper and snap judgments, he has built a reputation for targeting minorities disproportionately during his patrols. Whether it's issuing unnecessary citations or conducting unwarranted searches, his actions reflect a pattern of bias that has gone unchecked for years. His behavior is often justified by his colleagues as tough policing, but within the community, he is seen as a symbol of intimidation rather than protection. The cop's sense of invincibility stems from the lack of accountability he has faced throughout his career. Emboldened by the informal culture within the department that often shields officers from scrutiny, he believes his badge grants him unchecked authority. His actions are driven not just by prejudice, but also by an inflated sense of self-importance, which blinds him to the harm he inflicts on those he targets. While he sees himself as an enforcer of the law, his methods often undermine the very principles of justice he is sworn to uphold. However, the cop's biases are not entirely rooted in malice. They are also a product of ignorance and a lack of meaningful exposure to individuals who challenge his preconceived notions. His worldview, shaped by years of unexamined privilege and a skewed perception of crime, leaves him ill-equipped to see people as more than stereotypes. This limited perspective becomes both his shield and his downfall, preventing him from recognizing the humanity in those he unjustly targets. Their paths cross one fateful day, setting the stage for a confrontation that will test both of their beliefs. For the doctor, it's another instance of navigating prejudice while staying true to her principles. For the cop, it's an encounter that forces him to face the consequences of his unchecked biases. As their worlds collide, the tension between their roles as healer and enforcer becomes a powerful narrative of justice, accountability, and the potential for change. The emergency room is in chaos as the wealthy white woman is rushed in, barely clinging to life. Her face is pale, and her breaths are shallow, indicating the severity of her condition. The black doctor, known for his expertise in critical cases, steps forward to lead the team. His voice is calm but authoritative as he issues instructions, and the staff quickly moves into action. However, as the woman begins to regain partial consciousness, she weakly protests, "No, I don't want a black doctor. Someone else, please." Her voice is faint but firm, laced with disdain. The medical staff exchanges uneasy glances, but the doctor doesn't waver. With an unshaken voice, he responds, "Right now, I'm your best chance." He knows her life is at stake and refuses to let prejudice interfere with his duty. Despite the woman's objections, the doctor begins the necessary procedures, working with precision and focus. The tension in the room is palpable as nurses and technicians try to balance their professionalism with the unease created by the patient's remarks. Yet, The doctor's composure and commitment to saving her life set the tone, and the team follows his lead. As the treatment progresses, complications arise, requiring immediate intervention. The doctor's years of experience guide him through the critical moments, and his decisive actions stabilize her condition. The monitors beep rhythmically, signaling that the danger has passed, for now. Outside the operating room, news of the woman's remarks spreads among the hospital staff. Some are outraged while others shake their heads, saying, "It's nothing he hasn't heard before." A few younger doctors and nurses are visibly upset, wondering how someone could reject help in such a dire situation. The doctor's reputation as a skilled and compassionate professional contrasts sharply with the woman's prejudice, making the incident even more striking. Meanwhile, the woman's family begins arriving at the hospital. Her daughter is the first to appear, frantic and worried. She is quickly briefed on the situation and learns about the doctor who saved her mother's life. Embarrassed by her mother's remarks, she apologizes to the staff, expressing gratitude for their care. Later, the woman regains full consciousness in her hospital room. She notices the doctor entering to check on her condition. Her face stiffens, and she mutters, "I suppose I should thank you." Her tone is far from warm, but it is a grudging acknowledgement of his efforts. The doctor, maintaining his professionalism, responds, "Your recovery is thanks enough." He continues to monitor her vitals, explaining the next steps in her treatment, without addressing her earlier comments. The woman's family, particularly her daughter, watches the interaction closely. They seem torn between relief at her survival and discomfort with her lingering prejudice. The daughter pulls the doctor aside and says, "I'm so sorry about what she said. Thank you for saving her life." Her sincerity contrasts with her mother's attitude, offering a glimpse of hope for change. As the days pass, the woman's health improves, but the incident continues to weigh on the hospital staff and the family. The story begins to spread, sparking conversations about bias in healthcare and the grace shown by professionals like the doctor. The woman, meanwhile, finds herself reflecting on the events, though it's unclear if her perspective will change. The doctor's calm and composed handling of the situation serves as a testament to his character. Despite being subjected to prejudice in a critical moment, he remains focused on his oath to save lives. His actions leave a lasting impression on those who witnessed the incident, highlighting the power of professionalism and empathy in the face of ignorance. This moment marks a turning point, not just for the individuals involved, but for the broader conversation about prejudice and humanity. Whether the woman chooses to embrace this opportunity for growth remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the doctor's unwavering commitment to his principles has already set an example for everyone around him. As the dust begins to settle in the hospital room, the wealthy woman stirs and regains consciousness. Her initial disorientation quickly gives way to shock as she notices the black doctor standing at her bedside. Her instinctive reaction is one of hostility, fueled by years of ingrained prejudice. She immediately demands to know why he is treating her, and insists that someone else take over her care. The room falls silent as nurses and other medical staff exchange uneasy glances. The doctor, composed and professional, calmly reassures her that he is the attending physician and that she is receiving the best possible care. He briefly explains the emergency procedure he performed to save her life, detailing the meticulous steps that were taken to ensure her survival. Despite his efforts to put her at ease, her reaction remains cold and dismissive, laced with subtle but unmistakable disdain. The tension in the room is palpable, but the doctor refuses to let her hostility affect his demeanor. He maintains his professionalism, gently advising her to rest and focus on her recovery. As he leaves the room, he can hear her muttering under her breath about how things used to be different. He chooses not to engage, aware that any confrontation would only escalate the situation. Meanwhile, news of the woman's prejudice begins to spread among the hospital staff. Many are appalled by her behavior, especially given the doctor's reputation for excellence and compassion. Some nurses quietly recount similar experiences they've witnessed during their careers, lamenting how even life-threatening situations can fail to override deeply rooted biases. Later that evening, the woman's daughter arrives at the hospital. A progressive and open-minded individual, she is mortified when she learns about her mother's behavior toward the doctor. She insists on meeting him to offer a heartfelt apology on her family's behalf. When she finds him in his office, the doctor listens to her apology with grace, though it is clear the incident has left a mark on him. In the days that follow, the woman begins to recover, and her attitude gradually softens. She starts asking questions about the doctor, his qualifications, his background, and why he chose to become a physician. Her inquiries are initially laced with skepticism, but as she learns about his struggles and achievements, her perspective begins to shift. One evening, as the doctor makes his rounds, the woman calls him into her room. For the first time, her tone is not combative but curious. She admits she may have misjudged him and thanks him, albeit hesitantly, for saving her life. The doctor accepts her gratitude with quiet dignity, though he does not seek validation from her. Outside the hospital, the story of their interaction starts to gain traction. Staff members share the incident with friends, and soon it becomes a viral topic on social media. The woman's initial prejudice and the doctor's composed response ignite a larger conversation about implicit bias and the resilience required to confront it in professional spaces. While the woman's journey toward understanding is far from complete, the revelation of the doctor's humanity and dedication to his craft forces her to confront her deeply held beliefs. The world watches as this unexpected encounter challenges both individuals in ways neither could have anticipated. The immediate aftermath of the incident sent ripples throughout the community. The officer was promptly placed under investigation, following the outcry from witnesses and the victim's formal complaint. His suspension was announced the next day, a decision that resonated with a public increasingly aware of systemic inequalities and the need for accountability within law enforcement. The police commissioner, under immense public and media scrutiny, addressed the matter during a press conference. This kind of behavior is unacceptable in any context, he stated firmly. It does not reflect the values of this department, and we are committed to ensuring justice is served. He pledged to overhaul internal policies, implementing mandatory bias training, stricter oversight mechanisms, and fostering an environment where accountability and respect were paramount. His words struck a chord with many, but skepticism lingered among those who had seen similar promises go unfulfilled. At the center of the storm was the doctor, whose composure and resolve had turned a degrading encounter into a powerful catalyst for change. At home that evening, she sat with her husband, recounting every detail of the incident. Her voice carried a mix of frustration and determination. "This isn't just about me," she said. "It's about the countless others who don't have the privilege or platform to push back against this kind of treatment." Her husband, a community organizer and her staunchest supporter, listened intently. "You've always fought for what's right," he said, taking her hand. "This is just another moment where your voice can make a difference." Together, They began discussing how to turn the incident into a rallying point for systemic change. Their first step was organizing a town hall, inviting local residents, activists, and law enforcement representatives to discuss experiences, concerns, and potential solutions. The turnout was overwhelming. People from all walks of life shared their stories, some similar to the doctor's, others more harrowing. Through tears and applause, a common thread emerged: the urgent need for accountability and trust between the community and those sworn to protect it. The doctor, who had always been a quiet advocate, found her voice resonating louder than ever. She partnered with her husband to establish a local coalition aimed at bridging the gap between the community and law enforcement. The group worked on initiatives such as educating residents about their rights, providing legal aid to those wrongfully targeted, and advocating for legislative reforms to address bias and misconduct in policing. Her efforts did not go unnoticed. Media outlets picked up her story, framing her as both a victim and a leader. Interviews and speaking engagements followed, amplifying her message. "This isn't just about punishment for one officer," she said during one televised appearance. "This is about creating a system where this kind of behavior isn't just punished, it's prevented." The officer, meanwhile, faced increasing scrutiny. The investigation uncovered a troubling history of similar complaints, none of which had resulted in significant consequences. This revelation added momentum to the calls for reform, underscoring the systemic nature of the problem. Back at home, the doctor and her husband took a moment to reflect on everything that had unfolded. "Do you think this will really change anything?" he asked. She looked at him with quiet determination. "It already has. We've started a conversation they can't ignore." The incident, which began as an act of injustice, became a turning point for the community and a catalyst for broader change. It served as a reminder that even in moments of adversity, resilience and collective action could pave the way for progress. The events surrounding the shocking encounter between the black doctor and the racist woman sparked profound and lasting changes, not just for those directly involved, but for the wider community and the systems that served them. What began as a moment of bias and confrontation evolved into a turning point, redefining how people viewed prejudice, accountability, and the role of individual courage in fostering systemic change. Within the hospital, the incident served as a wake-up call. Leadership swiftly enacted reforms aimed at addressing the biases that had long simmered beneath the surface of the institution. Mandatory anti-bias training became a cornerstone of the new policies, ensuring that every staff member, from administrators to medical personnel, was equipped to recognize and challenge prejudice in their daily work. Clear channels for reporting misconduct were established, with promises of transparency and accountability to protect the dignity of every patient and professional. The doctor, though initially reluctant to step into the spotlight, became an enduring symbol of strength and integrity. Her colleagues rallied behind her, publicly expressing their admiration for her composure and professionalism in the face of hostility. Patients, too, began to see her as more than a skilled surgeon. She was a beacon of resilience and hope for those who had felt marginalized or unseen. She continued her volunteer work at underserved clinics, her presence now resonating even more deeply with those she served. Her impact extended far beyond the hospital walls. Community leaders reached out to her, inviting her to speak at forums and events about the importance of equity and empathy in healthcare. She became an advocate for systemic reform, partnering with policymakers and activists to address disparities in treatment and access to medical care. Her speeches, grounded in her lived experiences, inspired others to confront their own biases and commit to building a fairer society. The woman who had initially resisted the doctor's care underwent a transformation of her own, waking up to the reality that the person she had scorned had saved her life, forced her to confront the prejudices she had harbored for decades. Under the guidance of the doctor, she began engaging in community outreach and supporting initiatives that promoted diversity and inclusion. Though the process was not without its challenges, she took steps to reconcile her past actions with her newfound understanding. In the final scene, the doctor walks into a bustling community shelter where volunteers and residents alike greet her with applause. The room buzzes with energy, filled with people united by a shared commitment to lifting one another up. Her husband, who had worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure the hospital followed through on its promises, smiles proudly as he coordinates resources for the shelter's latest initiative. A sense of unity and purpose permeates the room as the doctor begins addressing the crowd. Her voice is steady, her words imbued with the wisdom of someone who has endured adversity and emerged stronger. "We cannot change the past," she says, "but we can learn from it. Together, we can build a future where dignity, respect, and fairness are not ideals but everyday realities." As the crowd erupts into applause, the camera pans out, capturing the shelter as a symbol of what can be achieved when individuals and communities work together to challenge injustice. The voiceover echoes the doctor's sentiment. Injustice thrives in silence, but when we speak up, when we act with courage and compassion, we create a ripple effect. Change begins with us, but its impact is limitless. In the end, the doctor's actions did more than save a life. They inspired a movement. The hospital became a model of inclusive care. The community found strength in unity, and individuals from all walks of life carried forward the message that justice is a shared responsibility.